Yesterday, we broke down how Raptors fans are fired up. The Raptors trade away Pascal Siakam given how well he's been playing in the first round of the playoffs. But now, it's not just the fans, Raptors insiders, the people that are tight with Masai Ujiri, getting the info straight from the source. They're coming out on Twitter and directly sort of calling out what a fumble this move was, at least in their opinion. So we're going to break down what the Raptors insiders are saying, whether or not it actually makes sense, and whether or not the criticism is actually warranted toward Masai Ujiri, because the backlash is just getting kind of bananas here now at this point. And looking even at my comment sections, obviously Twitter, Reddit, and all these spaces, everyone has a pretty different opinion, so we gotta weigh in terms of what everyone's saying. But before we dive into that, folks, again, you want to stay up to date with everything regarding this team, you're part of the 51% that haven't subscribed just yet. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Got a lot of fun things planned for Raptors Digest over the next few weeks and definitely heading into the off season. But let's dive into what's been going on, because as I said yesterday, Pascal Siakam has been on an absolute tear, putting up 35 plus points in both of the first two games in the NBA playoffs against the Milwaukee Bucks. Yes, it's without Giannis Antetokounmpo, but the Pacers, who were the underseed playing in the road, still going up against Damian Lillard, a strong team there in Milwaukee. Pascal Siakam is leading that squad, led them to a road victory, splitting the series to now giving the Indiana Pacers home court advantage, to start off this playoff. So, at least in this first round. So what's going on? How are people reacting to this? Because obviously at surface value, the Bruce Brown acquisition was a fumble from Pascal Siakam trade, but we did get a bunch of draft picks, that were really the centerpiece. The reason they made that deal, obviously we flipped one draft pick for Ochai Agbaji and Kelly Olynyk, who Olynyk didn't have crazy trade value, but I think was an awesome pickup for this Raptors team. But Agbaji, is the jury still out? Struggled immensely on the offensive end, but as Masai Ujiri put, could be one of the best defenders in the NBA if we let him develop, let him grow, let him blossom. But basically, Raptors insiders, the guys locked into this team, are not happy with what Masai Ujiri made in regards to that trade. And the first guy we're going to look at is Josh Lewenberg, who had a lot to say. Obviously, the players to start the playoffs with back-to-back 35 and 10 games, Pascal Siakam and Wilt Chamberlain. So obviously, high standards for Pascal Siakam's current playoff run. But basically, Josh Lewenberg came out and said an all-NBA caliber player in his prime who loved the city and wanted to stay. And yet the Raptors couldn't figure out a way to keep him or trade him from a position of leverage. Don't be surprised if and when the Siakam trade goes down as one of the worst in franchise history. He went on to say that I still think the optimal move, once they opted against moving him others at the 2023 trade deadline, was to extend him last summer. If they wanted to pivot, if they wanted to, he would have been trade eligible at the trade deadline with plenty of term left on the movable contract and more leverage and better offers. Obviously, because we didn't get a haul in return for Pascal Siakam. OG Anunoby, we definitely did, but certainly Pascal Siakam. I think everyone agrees. If we had leverage in that deal, we should have gotten a lot more for the caliber of player that he is. Lewenberg goes on to say that now the Raptors have hit on what will most likely be two mid to late first round picks, 19th this year and a 2026 top 4 protected, and hope Agbaji turns into something. And that's just to come close to breaking even. Happy for Siakam, he's in a good spot and thriving. He will get his bag soon this summer. So that's a lot of things that Josh Lewenberg brought up. And these are the things that I've kind of agreed with. It was my initial sentiment when this trade initially happened. Again, we have to give this trade time. If we want to see what sort of happens, we have to see if Masai Ujiri is able to hit on these draft picks, 19th and that 2026 sort of first. But obviously, Bruce Brown was a fumble. We'll see what happens with Agbaji. But those two draft picks were the reason they made that deal. But it's not just the one for one, or at least the assets we specifically got back and straight up for Pascal Siakam. Because the other part of this deal that's kind of getting ignored, and we're going to take a look at what other insiders have said, but basically is that in making this move, it's not, I want to say addition by subtraction, because the team is certainly better off with Pascal Siakam on it. But you'd be committing basically, I don't want to say a supermax, but definitely a max contract deal to Pascal Siakam if he stayed on the Toronto Raptors. So that's a lot of cap space being eaten up. And he was playing very similar role, similar position to what Scotty Barnes is out there on the court kind of trying to do. And obviously Scotty, Pascal, both of them have certainly improved their three-point shooting as their NBA careers have gone along, but neither of them are like that perfect 3-point floor spacer. And then you acquired RJ Barrett and an absolutely steal of a trade with OG Anunoby getting IQ in it as well. Then I just don't know. I can see where the front office, I would have liked to see it. I wanted to see a much bigger sample size of the RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam IQ sort of top 4 on this team. I was unhappy when they didn't let it breathe a little bit. I thought it could have been one of those Rudy Gay-esque trades where, again, the Raptors are kind of mid, kind of in that lower tier positioning, and then you make one move, you still have some talented guys on the roster, and then the team could potentially flip, because we won a ton of games before Jakob Poeltl ended up going down with injury. Then I think we jumped the gun in terms of trading Pascal. That's my take on the deal. But basically, I can see where the front office was willing to do that because, frankly, RJ, Scotty, Pascal, you'd have to get creative in order to make those lineups work, especially if Jakob Poeltl is your center. There's not a ton of floor spacing on that group, but it's not absolutely cooked as some were kind of making it out to be. So that's one asset of it, and then the other asset is obviously the flexibility that you have. Masai Ujiri now has the full reins to build this team specifically around Scotty Barnes. Every move that can be made now is built around Scotty, RJ, IQ, that sort of core 3 players for this team. And if you're locking into Pascal Siakam, you might be locking yourself longer in term into a fit that might not be super optimal, that you might be able to sort of finesse your way into over the next couple seasons. Again, I would have liked to see it play out because I'm a big fan of Pascal Siakam. Watching this team play, when we did have our squad healthy, it felt like we were just kind of that one forward away from being a really nice squad out there in the Eastern Conference. But that's just me. You guys can disagree. But other insiders come out. Chris Wilder, less locked in than Josh Lewenberg, of course, but he says it's cool if you're fine with the Raptors trading Pascal Siakam, but I think we can all agree that the franchise didn't maximize his return package for someone that talented. That, in large part, is due to the front office waiting as long as they did to pull the trigger, and that's certainly the case. I definitely agree that would have been more optimal to trade him at the previous trade deadline or potentially in the offseason. Again, those Jalen Johnson, DeAndre Hunter packages, especially before Jalen Johnson took that leap, took that jump. We were roasting that trade package kind of the summer, Jalen Johnson, DeAndre Hunter in the summer, but frankly, Jalen Johnson's looked like a monster, and maybe you had a Kobe Buffkin in there. Could have been a better package than what we received, especially if we get some draft capital in it from the Atlanta Hawks. But that is what it is. We can't go back in time, but yeah, I personally would have liked to extend Pascal Siakam, see how it played out, and then maybe trade him in the future. But then Michael Grange also came out reacting to the same Wilt Chamberlain stat line, saying that with the 19th pick or the 31st pick or the other top 4 protected pick in the 2026 draft, the Raptors don't draft anyone as good as Pascal Siakam. So, again, a little subtle jab, not subtle, but a little jab there at Masai Ujiri, the front office and stuff. And I think it's always a little bit wild when, the reporters that are kind of tuned, locked in, trying to get their information straight from the front office are kind of just throwing jabs at them on Twitter. I mean, if you have questions, if you're questioning the sort of move, ask those questions in the press conferences, man. You guys got the press box in there, Michael Grange, Josh Lewenberg. Ask those hard questions. I know they try, and you got to word it a certain way. You don't want to be disrespectful or anything like that, but I don't know. It is what it is. I don't want to grill. They do a good job. People roast Michael Grange. People roast Lewenberg. People roast the kind of, the Raptors insiders, the beat reporters getting stuff wrong or, being a bit, Raptors sort of, not necessarily Raptors, but Toronto media in general can be a bit defensive or, used to losing, so to speak. Will this guy stay? Yada, yada, yada. But I want to give a shout out, even though I might agree, might disagree, whatever, with Lewenberg and Grange on this one. I want to give a little shout out, give a little love to those guys. But anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.